going to start this video off with a survey. You don't actually have to answer it anywhere, just, think about it in your head. Cool? Cool. Here's question 1. Cute and cuddly, forever loyal, man's best friend. Would you like a pet dog? Alright, are you ready for question 2? Chewing up your house. Cleaning after its messes, and expensive too. Would you like a pet dog? It doesn't sound quite as good that time, does it? Both questions ask the same thing. If a person would like a pet dog. The words around that question, however, are obviously quite different. If I were to ask strangers one of these questions, I would expect a lot more people to say that they want a man's best friend. Well, many people might not be interested in the mutt you picture for the second question. In reality, the truth is probably somewhere in between. In surveys, questions like this are called leading questions. They lead people to a desired response. If you have any interest in the truth, then these questions immediately undermine that goal. It is why you never see an official survey with leading questions like this. The thing is, I got an ad the other day for a poll using leading questions, an official survey. I'd like to show you all the ways Donald Trump's official Socialism Approval Poll is designed to lie to you. Donald Trump's official Socialism Approval Poll is nothing unique. He has others like it on his website, such as polls about the dangers of mainstream media, and a Trump approval poll that asks users to rate his performance on a scale of okay to great. These are all examples of push polls, fake surveys designed to sway individuals to feel more inclined to join a cause or give money. They have been used by all ends of the political spectrum, especially by phone call. However, there are two major aspects of Trump's push poll examples that make them stand out. The first is that nobody does this online. Push polling has been denounced by most major research organizations because it obscures truth and hurts well-meaning data collection. Publishing one on the internet garners immediate backlash from such organizations. Secondly, this is being used by a sitting president under the pretense of an actual survey, not just a fundraising technique. The president is sponsoring a website which serves only to obscure the truth. There is a laundry list of reasons this poll is not going to give information representative of reality. It will clearly suffer from response bias. Action.donaldtrump.com draws a rather specific crowd, and I doubt many die-hard socialists visit the website in their spare time. The omnipresent image of Donald Trump giving a big thumbs up next to the questions you are answering draws people to side with him. Most obviously, however, is the way each of these questions are so drastically leading to a desired answer. It uses emotional language, personal attacks, ties views to a prominent public figure, and adds one-sided information to paint a respondent's view of an issue. I'd imagine this is already enough of an argument that most people would agree. Yeah, that's a bad and biased survey. But even though you're already convinced, I'm going to beat this dead horse and prove it using math. I want to show just how strongly these factors impact responses, so I created my own survey. Each respondent would fall into one of two conditions. Either they would take the same survey as Trump's, recreated a word for word, Trump picture and all, or they would take my rewritten survey. I'm going to compare how people answer each set of questions. I polled people on Amazon's mTurk, a large online survey hosting platform addressing the issue of response bias. The rewritten survey removed all of the heavily biased elements. The easiest thing was simply not putting a huge picture of Trump egging you on. More importantly, I removed the leading language. No more all-caps words about how bad things would be for you. No superfluous information to paint how a person thinks. Just a set of questions asking the same opinions on socialism. This is a good time to point out that, even rewritten, this feels like a silly way to define and measure socialism. I mean, if someone says they have a favorable view of socialism, sure, but supporting increased taxes for welfare is not the same thing as being a radical socialist. Question 3 about the party of open borders is fully unrelated. It serves as a good example of Trump using the word socialism as a stand-in for anything affiliated with Democrats and the left. But more on the way Trump alters reality for his own narratives a little later. So, how'd the actual survey go? In all, 153 people took the survey, with 78 taking the unedited Trump survey and 75 taking my rewritten survey. I also gave each respondent a right score. I called it this because a high score is both politically right-leaning and it shows the right answers the original survey was aiming for. I took this from questions 1, 2, 4, and 5. Again, question 3 is simply too unrelated to socialism to really count. So, someone with a score of 0 is most socialist, and someone with a score of 4 is most anti-socialist. If the questions are free of bias, the scores for each survey would be the same. But they were definitely not the same. People who took Trump's survey had a much higher right score than the people who took mine did. Their responses were almost a half question more conservative than the more scientifically polled individuals were, which is more than enough evidence to say that Trump's survey artificially inflates conservative viewpoints, a blatant display of dishonesty. Here's how the responses filled out by question. Generally speaking, the reality shows people are actually far less right-leaning than Trump's biased results would have you believe. You may notice, however, that there is an outlier. People actually approved of socialism more when taking Trump's survey. That's definitely odd, so let's look at that question a bit more closely. Here's each survey's question about socialism approval rates. Well, I didn't change the language very much. You can see I changed how people can respond. I used what is called a Likert scale, a common way of letting people select an answer from a range rather than a set of extremes. When you look at how people actually answered this question, you can see that a majority of responses were somewhere in the middle. It shows people thinking not in black and white, but with nuance and reason. This is a pattern that shows up in the other questions as well. When non-extreme options were presented, people used them. In fact, a majority of the responses on my survey ended up somewhere in the middle. And this is where surveys like this turn from bad science into a dangerous false narrative. Trump loves silencing voices in the middle of the political spectrum. This false reality where there are only two options which are at full-blown ideological war with one another isolates his supporters into thinking the world is out to get them. He manufactures more conflict in the world than actually exists, leading to an angry and resentful constituency. The narrative Trump is most interested in is not one that aligns with truth, but one that obscures the truth in service of a politically expedient unrest. Now, I picked Trump's Socialism Approval Poll to make this point not because it is the most important example, but because it's fairly easy to prove. Even so, this relatively harmless example of Trump's penchant for dealing in lies has hair-raising implications. Trump does everything he can to block his supporters from outside sources, convincing them that they can only trust him. But his statements are riddled with falsehoods, designed to twist the world according to his own desires. If you have found yourself lulled into a trance by his strong and forceful narrative, understand that it is a twisted fantasy. And ask yourself why someone who claims to have your interests at heart would go out of his way to lie to you. That was a lot. Here's some links I found interesting as I was researching this, which you can also find in the description. I also linked the data I used, so you can check that out if you're a weird nerd like me. As I was putting this video together, I found a few other things that were interesting me, but didn't quite fit in the argument, so I'll mention them here. Trump's poll includes an official survey ID at the top of the screen, presumably to show how you've been given an official code for the survey. The thing is, no matter where or when I look at this website, the ID is always 1734651. He even lied about the survey ID to make it look more real. Here's another funny thing. People who took Trump's poll took much longer on average than those who took my rewritten poll, despite having fewer options to choose from. I like to think the full 1.5 seconds extra time per question was from people looking at the questions and being so stunned at how dumb it was that they just went, huh? What? Okay. Each time. Also, here are the scores to the question 3 that I mentioned, the one about the Democratic Party being the party of open borders. Shockingly, the rewritten survey was actually much more likely to slander the Democratic Party, despite answering more liberally otherwise. I think, and I might be wrong, but I think this is because Trump's survey specifically started out with the phrase, "Do you agree with President Donald Trump?" and was the only one to mention him by name. It might be that there are enough conservatives that are so repulsed by Trump that even hearing his name is enough to switch their answer to whatever he says, I disagree. I'm not really sure, but I just thought it was pretty interesting. I had a lot of fun making this video. It's completely new for me, so I'd love to hear what you thought about it. I know it's far from perfect, so I'm happy to hear any criticisms or just to chat about what I did here. I love finding the stories that statistics tell us, and I think this is a neat way for me to share those stories. Thanks for watching.